And it's the pre-show. Welcome, everyone. If you're watching this on the replay, you can fast forward about 14 minutes, and you'll be at the beginning. If you're watching this live, well, you'll just have to suffer through. And I'm assuming you're hearing me because I don't have my headphones on yet. That's how far ahead of the game I am. But that's why it's pre-show. That's what we do during the pre-show. We get the lights going. We put headsets in our ears. Let's see how this sounds. We get to turn it up high. Oh, I can hear myself, which makes all the difference. Hello, chat room. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll want to flip over to professormesser.com/live so you can participate in the chat room. I should probably make myself busy because I am. Let's change a few things on the website. Let's change the message at the top of the screen. Oh, okay. Get that going. All right. If you were a message at the top of the screen, where would you be? You would be right here, of course. And earned. Let's see. That's good. That's good. That's good. Here's the picture. Free Security Group is live. Click here to join us. /live. It's live right now. And let's reset the cookie. And let's save the changes. And let's empty the cache. Cache money. All right. Cache is emptied. And that's set up. The Socrative is up and running. www.socrative.com. Student login. Professor Messer is to Joe. It's to Joe. Let's go to Socrative.com. Oh, we should probably just do the live link. /live. All right, live is up. Live is up. Put that in the other chat room. I'm in the live event chat. I'm watching the live event chat. I'm actually, you can probably see on the screen, looking at both chats, but I'm really paying attention to the live event chat. Let's do a camera check. There's one camera. Hi, camera. Am I in the right place? Am I looking right? Okay, camera 2, camera 3, camera 4. Am I in the head? I can't even see myself. I need to move this whole screen over because I can't see me. I can't see anything. Let's move the screen. Da, 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 da. That's better. That's more better. Okay. I like it. I'm digging it. You can't see it, but I can see it. There's a big screen in front of me. Can't even see it in this shot. There's a big monitor that's up in the sky that I look at. What have we got going on? It's the Security Plus Study Group. Do I have the right presentation? Yes. Socrative is up. /Socrative.com student login button room name Professor Messer. Da 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 da. Okay. 10 minutes. Really closer to 9. Oh, we need some, I was going to say we need some cooling, and you can see the blue just turned on, so it just started cooling. I didn't have to touch it at all. There it goes. Oh, yes, it's much better. the air conditioning. Because what is it outside? It's here in the headquarters in Tallahassee, Florida, world headquarters for Messer Studios. We are currently at 77 degrees Fahrenheit. The high today will be 84 degrees Fahrenheit and clear. Rain tomorrow. You're going to miss that. Sorry. It's just how it goes. What else do I need to get set up and ready to go? I think I'm good. I got Skype at least running. I need to start up the call-in studio so that people can call in. That's good. All right. And what? We've got some Pete's, so that's good. Very nice. So, got a lot going on. 65 degrees in Washington, D.C. That sounds nice. Springtime. The cherry blossoms are probably out about this point. All right. We have 7 minutes to go. We'll have the emails will blast out in about 2 minutes, along with the tweets and the Google Pluses and the Facebooks. I didn't do a Facebook event or a Google Plus event this week. Not for not wanting to. I just didn't get to it. It's tax week here in the U.S. It was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed that on Monday. And that kind of threw me off the whole week. So here we are. We're lucky to be doing this at all, really. Really. I didn't do an audio check. I guess I could do something like that. Let's go to /live. Of course, when I do that, I'm not able to see everything on the screen. That's okay. I'll just try to start it right now. Did I start it? Did I start it? Did I get there? There we go. Let's see how it sounds. Of course, when I do that, I'm not able to see everything on the screen. That's okay. Yeah, it sounds all right. Sounds okay. Sounds like me, which is kind of what we're shooting for. What else we got going on? I guess that's it. I guess I'm just ready to sit here and do something. Is the camera angle good? I feel like I'm over on the side. Yeah, it's pretty good. Kind of shows me on the side there, but I think that's kind of how I have myself centered. All right. That's all good. Excellent. Now what? Now we wait. Now we wait to see what happens. Will anyone attend? Who knows? Let's see how many people are in there right now. Where's my analytics? Yeah, there's some folks in there. There's people watching. Imagine if there's one person. We're doing the live Q&A and just one person. Like one number would be 100%. And all the rest would be blank. Yes, you should see live currently. All right. Yeah, you should see me. It should not be the title page. You shouldn't see me. You should see all of this nonsense that I go through to do one of these things. It's one of those where, I need to record. See? It's always one thing. Record there. Let's open this thing up and start the Cylons recording. Very nice. What else? That was it. That was the big one, I think. I mean, I usually don't use these recordings. I rarely use these recordings. I just put it up on YouTube. It's at 720p, and it sounds okay, and it's good. It's fine for a replay. Still working on broadcasting 1080p straight to YouTube. I think that would look nice. I think that would be much better. I have plans. I'm going to get a piece of equipment. I wanted to buy something now actually 2 weeks ago to do this entire month at 1080p streaming. And I didn't because the National Association of Broadcasters trade show, their annual trade show, started Monday. And that's the day when all of the new goods, all the new toys come out. A lot of the things that deal with broadcasting, especially broadcasting online now. NAB is almost as much about online broadcasting, if not more so, than it is traditional broadcasting. And so I wanted to wait for that because knowing me, I would buy it, and then the following day, the newer thing would come out, and then I'd be really angry with myself. And of course, they didn't introduce a newer version of the thing I was going to buy, so it was a waste of time to wait. But what are you going to do? It's just how it goes. You will see. I will explain how all of the questions show up and how you can answer them. You can go to get a head start before we get going. I might as well just bring up the slide, right? And you can kind of, nope, that's not the slide. That's not the slide. That's the slide. Right there. You go to Socrative.com, go to the student login. I guess the button doesn't look that way anymore. I need to update the button and get a room named Professor Messer, just as it's named there. And go to the Socrative student app if you'd rather. That's one of the things that I'm now ready to go with is now I've got the equipment I need, and now I just need to add to it and do the 1080p streaming. I was going to get just a box. There's a box. You can get a very tiny little thing that broadcasts that. What's too bad? You use that Socrative student app on your Android phone not working. It's not my app. It's not my service, so I have no idea the details. I think you should get an iPhone. I think that's my suggestion to you. What a horrible suggestion. Your Android isn't working with this one app, so you need a completely new operating system. Yeah, the browser screen works great. Open up a browser, go to Socrative.com, and you can go from there. Let's see. Yeah, it's not really helpful at all. You need another phone, man. That's not very good advice. Worst advice ever. Well, don't take advice during a live stream, generally speaking. It's just a bad idea. Unless I'm right, and then you can do that. Well, when that happens, I'll be the first to let you know. Okay, what do we do? Where do we go next? What do we do next? We do a thing. We got like a minute. I think we're ready. I think I got all the pieces. We're recording. There's the Cylons. We're good. So true. How will we know how to play video games if we don't pay attention during the live stream? Because that's apparently how I figure things out. That's how me as a casual gets to at least do something interesting in the game. I've been spending all my time in the online at night with my Xbox. It's not very productive, but it's a lot of fun. I do enjoy that. What are we going to do next? What are we going to do next? Are we good? Okay. We are good. Let's prep this screen. Let's get this ready. Okay, let's do a thing, shall we? Hello, everyone. Welcome to the April 2016 Professor Messer Live Security Plus Study Group. This is the monthly study group that I do once about the third week or so of the month. It tends to change from now and then, but it's a once-a-month event where I ask you questions and then you can answer them online. I also have a live chat room going, and you can watch this live and participate in the chat at professormesser.com/live. I have a lot of questions ready for you to go during this first hour. So if you are watching this live, you'll get to participate live. You can answer the questions in real time. If you're watching this on the replay, there's no live component. You can, of course, keep track and answer the questions to yourself, but you'll just have to play along and watch what we are doing during this live event. I am also going to, in the first hour, do the Q&A, but in the second hour, I just open up the phone lines and we just chat really about anything. This tends to go in any direction whatsoever, and I open the phone lines. You can call in absolutely free, and we can talk about those things as well. There is quite a bit going on here at Messer Studios. I've been just cleaning my desk was enough for the week. This is one of these, if you're watching this live or on the replay, the 15th, this year, the 18th of April was tax day in the U.S., so this was tax week. So it was a fun week, really, for everybody. Everybody was in a chipper mood. Just walking around in the streets, in the stores, online, everybody was really happy. You can see how happy we are by watching what we do on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube. You can, of course, go to professormesser.com/athing, and whatever that thing is something you might be interested in. It might be Instagram, it might be Twitter, it might be Facebook, it might be YouTube. Just put it here at the end, and we'll absolutely be able to do that. This is also a place where you can get the discount vouchers. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers, and you can, of course, get that as well. There's also, of course, an offline version of my Security Plus course. It's one that has the videos, the MP3 files, my course notes come with this. It's something that I'm very happy to provide, because a lot of you are not able to go online because you're on a plane or you just have bad internet access. So I can send you my flash drive, and the Professor Messer flash drive, which is just faded out a little bit on the screen there, has everything on it. So it's a great way to get the Security Plus course along with all of the little pieces. I also, when you purchase this, you can also download it immediately as well if you do have a very good internet access. You can go to professormesser.com/getsecplus for more information on that. Well, as I mentioned, you get to answer questions today, and I do this in real time. So I'm going to ask the question. You are not going to Google it. You're not going to put it in the chat room. You are instead going to go to Socrative.com, click the student login, and go to the room named Professor Messer. Make sure you spell it right, or there will be no question in there waiting for you. You have to make sure it's spelled PROFESSORMESSER, and you'll be able to get in there. And if you make a mistake, you'll be in the wrong room, just as the chat room is saying, I make a mistake sometimes in giving you the questions themselves. We have to fix it in real time. It's a live event, people. It's the way it works. Once you're in there, you'll see a question right now that I've posted. I usually start this question up about 30 minutes before the show starts, so you can absolutely go in and have a look at this. And you can see right now there is a question: how long have you been studying for your Security Plus certification? And you get to work down these particular pieces. I have a number of options here. Have you been studying for less than 3 months? Have you been studying for 3 to 6 months? Have you been studying from 6 to 9 months, 9 months to a year, over a year? Or I already have my Security Plus certification. So again, you go to Socrative.com, or you use the Socrative app, and you're able to get in and answer these particular questions. It's a great little service, the Socrative. I could not live without it. And you can see that a lot of you have already answered. 57% of you have said less than 3 months. That's the majority here that are watching today. 13% of you already have your Security Plus certification. Sometime during the presentation today, I will give you a keyword, and that keyword allows you to get a 1-hour CEU for watching this. So I'll give you all the instructions on exactly what to do when I give you the keyword. The actual process of sending me the keyword is part of the process of doing it. So if you don't follow the right steps, you don't get the CEU. It's kind of nice to have that there. The SY0401 is the latest Security Plus certification. I say latest, it was released in April of 2014. So we've probably got another year before we see another one released. They go on usually 3-year update periods, which is great. If you're studying right now, you're watching us live, you have a year and probably a little bit more, because they tend to overlap the old and the new certifications whenever they release the new one. So you could probably see this well over a year as being available right now. So it's very useful to have that there. This is a single exam. You don't have to take multiple exams to get your Security Plus. You sit down for 90 minutes. It could be a maximum of 90 questions. You might get fewer than 90 questions, and you have to get a passing score of 750 on a scale between 100 and 900. And if that seems confusing, I believe that's because CompTIA would like it to be. It's kind of hard to tell how many questions you have to get right. On top of that, there will be both multiple choice questions and performance-based questions. And sometimes during our study groups, I give you a performance-based question. A performance-based question might be being able to answer a fill-in-the-blank question. Maybe it's a matching question. Maybe it's putting in an order from ascending to descending. There could be a number of different types. What CompTIA calls a performance-based question is really a question that's not asked with multiple choice. It's kind of a, why don't you just say a non-multiple choice question, because that's really what it is. And I'll probably talk more about those in the after show as well if people would like to know more about performance-based questions and what to expect. There's a few things you probably might want to know before going into your exam. Well, with that, let's jump into the questions, shall we? This is the Security Plus exam, so I'm going to ask you a Security Plus question, and this one is a very specific. We're going to jump right into ciphers. When people send me the registration for the study group, it is very common that people will say, I need more help with ciphers, with hashing, with encryption, that whole last part of the exam objectives. So I thought we would jump right into it. Fortunately, it's a multiple choice question. So which of these is a symmetric encryption cipher? Is it MD5, RSA, HMAC, NTLM, or 2FISH? One of these is going to be a symmetric encryption cipher. If you think you know, do not answer in the chat room. Do not go to Google. You should try to figure this out on your own. The point here is not to get everything right. The point is to find out what you know and what you don't know. And if you don't know something, you're going to learn something when you get it wrong, which is even better. My goal is to get about 50% of you answering these questions right. So I'm designing these questions for you to fail. How you like that? That way, when you get it wrong, you can understand why you got it wrong. You can understand what the right answer is. If you're getting all of these correct, then maybe it's time you should go take your exam. So if you think you know the question, go to Socrative.com to the room name Professor Messer, and you will be able to answer this question. And a number of you are answering this question right now. I love this. I love questions like this because it really goes to the core of the things you need to know for the exam. Knowing symmetric encryption ciphers is clearly documented on the CompTIA exam objectives. If you don't have the CompTIA exam objectives, that is one place you should go to the Google machine and type in CompTIA exam objectives. You can also go to professormesser.com/objectives, and I will redirect you over to the CompTIA website so that you can answer this as well. Let's see how we did with this one. Wow, we're all over the place. We're kind of tied for first, aren't we? We've got a top three anyway. RSA is 36%, 37%, MD5 29%, 2FISH 26%, and in single digits, nobody chose HMAC or NTLM, which I find interesting. So there were key pieces to this question that we needed to understand. So if you weren't quite certain what exactly you should need to know on this, then you should really think about what these things mean. You should know what symmetric means, and you should know what an encryption cipher is. Certainly an encryption cipher versus, for instance, a hash. That's a very different thing. You need to know what those differences are. In fact, one of the questions I got this week is, could you explain the difference between encryption and hashing? And so we may do that in the after show. So let's talk about symmetric, specifically a couple of very specific symmetric encryption ciphers, Blowfish and 2FISH. I kind of gave away the answer right there, didn't I? An encryption cipher is something you use to encrypt some what we call plain text. This is the non-encrypted information. We encrypt this plain text so that nobody else can read it. On the other side, you decrypt that information so that you have the plain text back and available again. So that is the process of encryption and decryption. Now, of course, this process of encrypting and decrypting can be done using a number of different methods. Two of the most popular are symmetric encryption and asymmetric encryption. And the names kind of give away what the differences are. With symmetric encryption, both sides are using exactly the same key to either encrypt or decrypt the information. If it's asymmetric encryption, it's kind of a crazy type of encryption where you can encrypt with one key and decrypt with a completely different key. It's crazy. We're going to talk more about that today as well. I'm specifically asking you for a symmetric encryption cipher, which means we're going to be encrypting and decrypting that information to regain the plain text with exactly the same key. And two of the most popular methods, or two very popular methods at the times, or Blowfish, which was designed in '93. You've got a variable length key with this one, which is nice. The longer the key, generally speaking, the harder it is to do a brute force attack on that particular piece of information. Blowfish and Twofish, you'll find, are still mentioned. They're even still used in some cases, depending on what type of application you may be using. Twofish is probably the one you'll see the most these days because you can go up to a 256-bit key, which is kind of nice. This is one where there is no patent on this. It's in the public domain, so you do tend to see this as an option on a number of applications that allow this because you don't have to pay any additional fees. There's no licensing fees to use this. There's no extra charge to use this type of encryption. It's something that's freely available, which is great to have that capability. There are a number of other symmetric encryption ciphers that we have not talked about today, but I have an entire video that goes through symmetric encryption ciphers, and it's useful for you to know the different categories. Is it symmetric or asymmetric? Is it an encryption cipher, or is it something we're doing for hashing? And you'll know looking at these answers what these things are. MD5, for instance, and HMAC are hashes. It's a little different than an encryption cipher. So you should have been able to get rid of A and get rid of C immediately. That's something that's easy to do. NTLM is another hashing methodology that's used on Windows. So again, hashes are not part of an encryption cipher. We're not able to decrypt something that has been hashed. Hashing is very commonly used for something like a digital signature, for example. RSA is an asymmetric encryption cipher, so that is not something that would apply here. In this case, the only really good answer, the only answer at all, is Twofish. That is the answer. The 33% of you got that one absolutely right. Maybe that one was too hard. I tell you, I always try for 50%. But those of you that didn't get that right, now you know what these different types of words and abbreviations refer to. And now you understand, hopefully, the difference between encryption ciphers, hashes, or at least a little bit of the differences, and certainly the difference between symmetric and asymmetric encryption. It becomes very useful to have that there. Very nice to be able to have that capability, too, as something that's free and available. Well, that's a good start, I think. We've got kind of the nice part of the study group going. I really just threw you right into the Shark Tank to answer these questions. Here's one that is not specifically a technical question. This one tends to be more of a policy and procedure question, and it is, what is the strategy of layering multiple security technologies together to create a strong security posture? As you're probably familiar on the CompTIA Security Plus exam, you do run into situations where it's not necessarily a technical question. There's a lot on process, there's a lot on procedure, and a lot on really designing a plan, a security policy, a very broad policy. So you should absolutely think of this one and how it works as well. There is a lot to consider also in here when you're working through these. So let's see what the different options might be for you. Would it be data encryption? Would it be encapsulation? Would it be key escrow? Would it be risk management, or would it be defense in depth? So this is one where it does come in handy to know some of these things. So perhaps you should absolutely work through those and understanding those pieces. Maybe it's one of, in fact, you may even want to look at the different answers that I have and see if you can throw any of them out, which helps as well. I think that's one that you do run into. So which one of these would be the strategy of layering multiple security technologies together to create a strong security posture? If you think you know, you can go to professormesser.com/live, and the Socrative link is on that page. You can also go to Socrative.com directly, go to the student login, and go to the room name Professor Messer. You will also be able to get the answer, at least answer what you think it might be. I'm going to take a peek, in fact, of how we're doing on this one. I think one of the things that you'll run into often when you're trying to plan a security policies, a strategy for security in your environment, is that you will be layering multiple security technologies together. There's not one thing you can buy and now you're completely secure. And that makes perfect sense, I think, to most of us, although in previous jobs where I was the security person walking into another company, this would absolutely be something to consider. with these pieces. Let's see how we do with, yes, if the live stream is cutting out for you, it's absolutely on your side. I send a single stream to YouTube. So you're seeing the stream come from the YouTube side. It becomes very useful to know that. So if you've got a good connection to YouTube, you're going to see this. But of course, there's also the replay here as well that you'll be able to work through. So very, very good to do that. And if somebody wants to put a link to the live link in the chat room, that might be useful too for some of the folks that are doing this. In fact, I'll just stick it in there. It's at professormesser.com/live. There we go. Let's see how we did on this one. What would be the strategy of layering these multiple security technologies to create a strong security posture? And wow, 74% of you said defense in depth. Is that really the right answer? Let's find out. We've got double digits here. 12% said risk management, which I think is a pretty good guess, in my opinion. 10% said encapsulation. And then we got single digits on data encryption and key escrow. Let's talk about this then. Let's talk about what you would do to be able to layer these things together. This is indeed, the 73% of you got this one absolutely right. It is defense in depth. This is a common term that we use in the security world when we're talking to people, because you need to have security on your workstations. You need it on your servers. You need it on your network. You need to be able to have security across every part of your organization with types of data that might be stored on servers, data that's going across the network, data that you're transmitting to a third party, data that you're putting into a backup tape. Everything has something to do with security. And when we talk about defense in depth, we really are talking about layering the security. You wouldn't just buy a firewall. You wouldn't just buy an IPS. You wouldn't just buy an antivirus application. You would have all of these working together, and they all have an advantage and a disadvantage all the way through your environment. Maybe when you start looking at these and going through the differences, that's when you really start understanding, I need a firewall. I need to have a DMZ set up to have my servers there. I need to have authentication on my network. I need to have an intrusion detection system, maybe a VPN access. So you can see we're just layering and layering and layering these technologies. And that's the idea. And it doesn't start or end with any one of these. You are constantly updating this. And of course, as soon as you think you have a perfect strategy where you've really got everything the way it should be, then the bad guys come up with something new. You know, the latest thing has been the CryptoLocker type of malware that gets on your systems and encrypts everything and then requires you to send money to get the key to decrypt all of your data that was previously on here. They're holding your data hostage. That is something now we've had to change how we look at security again. So it's a constant battle where you're trying to keep track of what the bad guys are doing. So if those of you that did answer defense in depth with E, that would be absolutely correct. I say risk management was a pretty good guess on this one, but risk management is about a broader perspective of understanding, if I do this one thing, what type of risk does this put me under? It is not talking about layering multiple technologies together to create a strong security posture. That is best described as defense in depth. Data encryption is certainly a method you can use to help. It's one of those layers to be able to do that. Key escrow, another one of those layers that you can have to protect data and, more importantly, retrieve the data. And then encapsulation is how we are able to send data across the network, for example, put data within other types of data. To have that there, not really a layering of security technologies at all, which means our best answer here really is E, defense in depth. Nice job on that one. Folks know what you're talking about when setting up your security policies. Well, let's now readjust our questions and ask a question that has to do with really somebody trying to get to your data. And this question is, which of the following is commonly used to trick the user into providing private or company confidential information? This is something that's a serious issue that one we all need to consider when we're trying to create that defense in depth. How do we prevent this from happening? Well, first we have to know what it is. So let's see how we do with this one. We know that we've got a number of different options available. Again, is this a zero-day exploit? Is it phishing? Is it a virus? Is it buffer overflow? Or is it database injection? It's got to be one of these, right? If you think you know, you can go to Socrative.com, to Professor Messer's room, or Professor Messer, no S on the end, and you'll be able to absolutely answer the question with this one. This is one when I created, I really didn't go for 50% on this one. You all should know what this one is, but I have a bonus question on this one. We're going to see if you happen to know. I guess we can call it a performance-based question. I got to fill in the blank after we're done with this one. What's sad is that this particular problem is extremely top of mind because a lot of organizations are really being hit with this issue in a very substantial way. This particular attack type, I guess you could call it, is one that is costing some companies millions of dollars. Millions. So that's one where we can absolutely look and see what we can doing from there. Let's see how we did with this one, answering this question. I think most of us did good on this one. I know that because, look at that, 98% said phishing. Of course it's phishing. And it's kind of sad that we know it's phishing because this is something that is an enormous issue. This is a huge problem where you might be having something pop up on the screen that looks absolutely legitimate. Here's a really good example of this, where it looks like the PayPal login screen. You got here because somebody sent you an email that said your PayPal credentials have been disabled, or your password needs to be updated, or a number of other things. They get you to go to this website and have you type these things in. This happens all the time. I get phishing in my inbox multiple times a day. Really, it goes to my spam box multiple times a day to be able to do this. Check the URL. That can often tell you that something is not quite right. Check to make sure everything's encrypted. If it's not encrypted with the proper key, then you'll be in bad shape. Something sometimes is not quite right. In fact, this particular phishing request is one where something was not quite right on it. Now, the bonus question I have for you is, what do you call this if you are doing this kind of phishing, not with a web page, but somebody's doing this over the phone to you? Somebody's calling you and specifically trying to get this private information from you, your login information, really trying to get an example of this. What specifically would you call this very tiny part of phishing over the phone? Well, one way to do that is phishing. Absolutely right. So this is one where somebody's asking for bank updates, somebody's asking for security checks, somebody's getting you on the phone to be able to do this, and now even much more with text messages. Here's a better screen of this PayPal. It looks really good. This is obviously the older PayPal login screen for this one, but boy, they did a really good job on it. That's a fake page. That's not really PayPal. You put in your email address, you put in your PayPal password, and then nothing works. And it says that's incorrect. In fact, it might redirect you over to PayPal once they've stored this information that they go through. That's why I always use PayPal has a additional multi-factor authentication on the PayPal. So they send me a text message when I log in, and I have to type in the message, the numbers that they sent me in the text message, which verifies that I have my phone with me, and nobody else is going to be able to answer that question because they don't have the text message on my phone. Yeah, the big phishing right now being done by the folks saying that they're from Microsoft and they're here to help you. Or the one that's really happened recently, I've gotten a few calls, which is not really phishing so much as just outright fraud, where they say they're with the United States with the Internal Revenue Service and they need money right now, and they want you to send them money. And if you don't have the money, they say you can call somebody and get the money, or we're just going to have to we're going to send a sheriff over to pick you up because you're going to jail, which is completely false. That's not the way it works. But they have you call your friends and your neighbors and your family members, and they tell you that you can't tell them why you want the money, or else they're going to go to jail. How you like that? So you have people calling you say, I need $500 right now, and I can't tell you why. And they're a friend of yours, and you want to help them. Like, okay, where's $500? Except it's really going to the scammers. They ended up having you buy Visa gift cards and send them the codes from the Visa gift cards. The IRS doesn't need Visa gift cards. If you're ever in that situation, just so you're aware, don't worry that for some reason that is something that runs into it. You have to be aware of these things. Trust nobody. That's exactly what you should do. is trust nobody. Yeah, the IRS does not call. They send you a letter. It's a very mean letter. It has frowny faces on it. I happen to know this. That's how they're going to get in touch with you. There is so much on the Network Plus exam. It is extensive. We've already talked about encryption types. We've talked about security policies. We've talked about attacks and ways to prevent these types of attacks already, and we're just getting started. The Security Plus exam is extensive to be able to do this. There is so much to know, and that's why I took everything from all of my videos and I created a set of notes for you. These are my Security Plus course notes. For the Security Plus exam, I started putting this together and it kept going on and on and on. This is much larger set of exam topics than A+. It's much larger than Network Plus. This is extensive, being able to do this. I don't want to show you me. I want to show you the course notes. Here we go. So here's a copy of the course notes. It's a PDF that you can download immediately when you purchase it. Then I've just put everything, all of the text, all the graphics, all the screens. There's all the port numbers you need to know for the exam. They're all in here. I've tried to be able to create one stop for you. It doesn't replace a book. It doesn't replace the videos. But if you're somebody like me that's kind of hard to take notes while you're watching the video, I've already taken the notes for you. And even better, every dollar you spend here goes back to keep the website going. So I want to thank everybody who has already purchased the course notes. Thank you so much for the support. Thanks for the feedback you get as well. Every new set of course notes, every time I do a new one of these, I think about the things you're telling me. And keeping that in mind. The last time people said, just put everything in there. Every bullet, every graphic. I said, okay, we're going to put it in there. And you folks have said, okay, that's really good to have that in there. It's exactly what you want to have. And of course, they're affordable. So again, $10, you've got some great notes to go with your studies, and it goes back to help support what we do with all the free videos that I make available for my entire Security Plus course. Thank you so much for your support with that as well. So if you'd like to know more about that, go to professormesser.com/securitycn for security course notes. And of course, it's also on the pull-down menus and the main page of the Professor Messer website. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. Let's do another question, shall we? I've got another one here that really goes into managing a data center. Now, if you've been in a data center, this one is going to be an easy one for you. If you've not really been working with data centers before, you've never stepped into a data center before, you may not have even seen this because it's an important part of data center management. And of course, keeping the systems running and running all the time is an important part of the Security Plus and really the overall security of your organization. Availability is a main part of security. So the question I have for you is, which of the following is a common method of managing airflow in a data center? And I have some options for you. Is it solar induction? Is it aplenum variance? Is it hot and cold aisles? Is it HVAC offsets? Or is it fan arrays? One of these is a common method of managing airflow in a data center. Don't answer in the chat room. Don't Google it. You should instead go to Professor Messer's page, my Professor Messer room name, at socrative.com. So make sure you go in there and have a look at what the answer might be. I'm going to take a peek real quick and see how you guys are doing with this one. You're doing very well with managing airflow in your data center. I've spent many hours in data centers, and I can tell you that this particular idea of managing airflow in a data center has not always worked this way. This is really kind of a more modern concept, certainly in the last 10 years, of managing a data center. There's been not really a new concept, but certainly more of an emphasis into creating a data center with this in mind. And people are doing a very good job on these and working through them. I like that it's at least something we can use. So let's see how we did on this one. I've already got it up for managing airflow in a data center. Let's just click the button, shall we? Flipping around to all these. Wow, 72% of you said hot and cold aisles. But 12% of you said HVAC offsets, 10% said fan arrays, 7% said plenum variance, and only 1% said solar induction. I'm surprised, since every single one of these is a completely made-up thing except for the right answer. And the right answer in this particular case is hot and cold aisles. Here's the slide from my hot and cold aisle video. We're kind of looking at the data center as if we're just walked into the door and we're seeing all of these racks laid out in front of us. Do I have a There's my yellow. So there's a server rack. I'll show you a picture of this in a moment. And this is one way to set up hot and cold aisles. The way that our equipment operates inside of these data centers is that there are fans pulling in cool air, and the air is coming out the other side warm, because all these systems get hot. So we're constantly pulling in the cold air and constantly putting out the warm air. This is one way of doing this, where you have a raised floor at the bottom and the cold air is coming up from the bottom and the warm air is going out the top, and it eventually comes back to your HVAC system, your heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system, and is being cooled down again and goes back under the floor, where it can then go back up into all of these different servers. Now, this, in practical terms, this looks very different. Here is a data center. Let me get rid of my head so we can really see what this looks like on here. There we go. So in this data center, you can see all the racks are set up. Notice between every other rack is this little curtain of plastic. And that's because it appears in this data center, the cold air, this is probably how it's working. It may not be. It may be coming down. Maybe your cold air is coming down from the top into the center and then is being pushed out to the outside as warm air. Or it might be reverse. It may be the cold air is on the outside and going into the hotter area. Usually the area that you're partitioning off, though, is the cool area. So it could work either way, though. The idea is that you're trying to keep the cool and the hot in separate areas so you can work with them. Here's another picture. This one I liked. It was very streamlined in this data center. This is an idea and a model where you have racks on both sides, and then there are doors in between. You're really closing off the entire area in the middle. I noticed there's no raised floor here. This looks like it's on a concrete floor. So in this one, you can even see there are separate, what appears to be cooling units on the top. This is probably the way this one is operating, where they're cooling the air. It's going into the middle of this where your cool zone is, and then all of the air on the outside is warm. Seeing how they have such a broad area and there's no way to come up from the bottom because it's concrete, that's probably exactly the way this one is operating. Very common to have a configuration this way now because it's so efficient in cooling these systems. And if you're buying new equipment now, one of the questions that people tend to ask is, what side is the cold side and which side is the hot side? Because that's how we're going to need to rack them in our racks and mount them so that the airflow is going in the right direction. A lot of the equipment I used to work with prior to there being such an emphasis in the hot and cold aisles is that there would be fans on the side, and that would pull air from side to side. People say, no, we don't want side to side. We need air to go front to back because we've set up all these hot aisles and cold aisles. And it needs to all flow properly so that we have the most efficient way. Obviously, cooling in a data center is a huge expense, and that was a good reason for setting up the data center that way. What a great picture, too. Really shows the data center and the way these hot and cold aisles are set up. So let's see how we did with this one. If you are someone who answered C, hot and cold aisles, 74% of you got this one absolutely right. I made up all the others. There's no such thing, well, there may be such a thing as solar induction, but not as it applies to data centers. There's no such thing as plenum variance, although it sounds really good. HVAC offsets, nope, no such thing. Fan arrays, actually there are fan arrays, but they have nothing to do with cooling down a data center. Your best answer here indeed was C, hot and cold aisles. The 74% of you got that one absolutely right. Let's do another question, shall we? This question is really going to be about authentication. Well, a little bit of it's authentication. It's really about more of, let's see the answers that I have here, more of an attack. Which of these uses an existing authenticated session? I could even say which of these, because the answers I have here are attack type methods or attacks. Which of these attacks use an existing authenticated session? It's a very common attack type to have an authenticated session there. And is the answer going to be XSRF? I guess that could also be written as CSRF or CSRF, buffer overflow, brute force attack, or rainbow table lookup. So this is one where these are clearly some attack types. Which one of these really takes advantage of, really doesn't use, but really takes advantage of an existing authenticated session? Be a better way to describe what we're looking for here. If you think you know the answer, Don't Google those answers. You should instead take a guess. Try to think about which one of these would really be taking advantage of an existing authenticated session. And if you know the answer, you can absolutely go to Socrative.com to the Professor Messer room. See if you can answer this one. Probably in this for those. I think there's a good place on the exam. There's a lot of attack types, a whole section of them on the Security Plus exam. And you should absolutely be familiar with the differences between one attack type and the other. And I try to give you examples of these attack types in the videos, and I try to give you some not only here's how it works, but here's how the bad guys used it to perform a particular task. So hopefully you have a way to do that as well and get into these details to understand what type of attack here would be able to take advantage of an authenticated session. Let's see how we did. How do we do? Let's click the button, and well, we're sort of mixed on this one. 44% of you said CSRF or XSRF. 36% of you said buffer overflow, and even double digits down here for brute force attack and rainbow table lookup. Well, this would be a good one to drill down into then. We're really talking about, with this particular options available, something like a cross-site script, XSS. This is where someone is able to take advantage of a vulnerability on your system where you're visiting a site and suddenly that script is referencing something else. A good example of this is when you have something like a cross-site request forgery, the CSRF that I mentioned in that earlier slide where we were looking at the different options. This is one that you may also hear referred to as things like session writing or a one-click attack. It's one where the bad guy is getting you to click something so that they can manipulate your machine into doing something else. A very common one, I think there was a very well-known CSRF vulnerability with microtorrent. I guess some people call it mutorrent or utorrent. I call it microtorrent because it uses a little micro symbol, although we usually write it with a lowercase u. It is a torrent client that happens to have a built-in web console that you can access from anywhere on your network on port 8080. And what people realized is there was no security on this web server that was essentially running on your machine whenever you started this torrent app. And what it would do, if they had you go to a website, that website could simply reference the web server running on your machine and have it perform different tasks. It might tell it to run a script. It might tell it to change a password. It might tell it to do anything that web server now has access to do. And the web server really had access to do a lot of different things on a server. One of the things it really took advantage of is if you were already authenticated or trusted to a third-party site. So you could have this uTorrent running. If this torrenting application was running on your machine and you visited a website that took advantage and performed this cross-site scripting, it could also send a message to your web server to then do something on Twitter. So it would post on Twitter for you, or it would post on Facebook as you, or perform other things on those sites as you, if you were already authenticated to Twitter, if you were already authenticated to Facebook. So that's the real challenge with this type of vulnerability, is that if it knows that it can gain access and make you run things, let's have it now run things on yet another site that we are taking advantage of somewhere where you already authenticated. And that's why in this particular case, a CSRF or cross-site scripting in this particular case is exactly the issue that we were going through for really taking advantage of an authenticated session. Having this cross-site scripting forgery is one that is also very powerful, because now a third-party application that has nothing to do with this application over here is now able to manipulate it. Really enormous issue. If you answered A, CSRF or XSRF, 43% of you got that one absolutely right. It's a very good vulnerability to be familiar with. It's not a buffer overflow. A buffer overflow does not really have anything to do with authentication. You're really trying to take advantage of a known problem with a particular application that can't handle a lot of information being stored in one particular place. Brute force attack, Brute force attack really doesn't care if you're authenticated or not. It's trying to find a password or trying to gain access to a system by using a lot of different means. In fact, you're really trying to get the authentication or the piece of information you're looking for during the brute force attack. Now, we've also got rainbow table lookups. This is a very common way to quickly reverse engineer a hash. Rainbow table lookups are used very often for that, but it has nothing to do with authentication. So that would not be our right answer either. The right answer is A, XSRF. If you were the 43% of you that answered that one, got it absolutely right. Well done. Let's keep this party going with another, this is more of a technical question dealing with SSO. Which of these, I have a list of things for you, would be considered SSO? Well, that's a good question. This is kind of a multi-step process, isn't it? Which of these is considered an SSO? Is it stateful inspection? Is it hashing? Is it Kerberos? Is it multi-factor authentication? Or is it reverse proxy? One of these really would be considered SSO. Now, there's a couple of these in here that you could maybe make a case for. But whenever you're doing anything with a CompTIA exam, really most certification exams, you should always find the best possible answer. Many questions will even say, which of these would be best considered SSO? But in this case, I felt that the options available to you made a very clear option of what SSO might be. It's a two-step process, obviously. You have to know what SSO is, and then you have to figure out, oh, which one of these has anything to do with that. And I can tell you're Googling because the numbers aren't going up very fast. You're going through the process and trying to figure out all the details and trying to find out which one of these is it again. I'm not quite sure exactly what that particular thing means. So make sure you go through that process and figure out those and get those running. You should be able to figure those out. I think if you step through, go to yoursocrative.com, click the student login, and go to Professor Messer, and you can answer this one as well. Okay, let's see how we did on this one. I see a number of you have finished your Googling because I can see now that you're answering the question. Let's see how we did. I'll bring this down so we can really see it. Which of these would be considered SSO? Well, we have 70%. I guess that's a vast majority. That's certainly a majority have said Kerberos, although 24%, nearly a quarter of you, and now almost a third, have said multi-factor authentication. So there's a good challenge. Is it one or the other? Now, notice we've also got stateful inspection at 4%, hashing at 3%, reverse proxy at 2%. Really, our 1 and 2 here is Kerberos and multi-factor authentication. It's got to be one of these then when we're talking about SSO. Well, SSO stands for single sign-on. This is one where I can sign on or authenticate one time and gain access to many different resources on the network. This is something very commonly seen with Kerberos. So you don't have to go to a web server and authenticate and then go to a separate file server on your network and authenticate. Maybe you have a number of shares that you connect to on your work computer. Wouldn't it be pain if every time you had to connect to a share, you had to put in your username and password, which never changes? You're putting in exactly the same thing over and over and over again. And then if you want to print, you got to put in your username and password. And then if you want to use the internet, you have to put in your username and password. That would be ridiculous. That would be very difficult to manage as an end user. So instead, you authenticate a single time, and Kerberos allows you now to effectively have a ticket that grants you access to the things that are appropriate for your particular login. This is so simple to use as well. Now I have a way to log in a single time and really have access to all of these different resources. This is very common to see in things like a Windows environment. Windows, for instance, uses Kerberos as a way to log on to your Windows domain, and now you've got a ticket that you can use to gain access to all these servers and all these resources that you're working on. It's a very common and very easy way to work through these. I really like the way that Windows operates in that way because it's so simple to have that there. So let's go back and look at our answers on these. Pull up my answers. So if you did answer Kerberos as considering this to be single sign-on, 66% of you, yep, got that one absolutely right with this one. Stateful inspection is a way that primarily seen in firewalls for it to allow the proper access out and in and prevent anybody from coming in who does not already have a session established. Hashing is a way to take information and create a digest of it, to create a digital signature, or to be able to create a summary of that information that you can then reference for later. Multi-factor authentication is simply another way to authenticate. It doesn't necessarily imply that it's the only single sign-on you will be doing. It's just a way to add additional factors to the way that you are authenticating. And for reverse proxy, that is certainly something that a lot of people will add authentication to, but it's not a single sign-on method. It's a way to communicate over the network and have a way to ideally provide some additional security. This is obviously means that C. Kerberos is the answer that we should be focusing on. And if you answered C. Kerberos, you got that one. Absolutely correct. Well done with those. There's so much to the Security Plus certification. There is all kinds of topics to discuss. We get into details about IP networking. There's information about setting up firewalls. We have to know about very broad policies and procedures. We have to be able to understand how VPNs operate. There's so much that we would need to know. Now, you could, of course, set up your own labs with your own technologies. You've got your own operating systems. You could run maybe your own virtual machines on your network. Or you could even get labs from a book and follow along in the book to determine what do I do next. There is also a way that you could go through this process online and have all of these labs available for you on the GTS Learning Live Labs. You can find out about these at professormesser.com/seclabs. I have the Sec Labs up right now. There's threats, cryptography, cryptography certificate management, application security. Here's Radius, transitive trust and authentication, rights and permissions, routers, routing protocols, and I can click on any of these and start a lab for that particular topic. The lab includes a number of machines that I can simply click on. There's some Windows devices, a domain controller that I can power up. I've got Linux devices on here, Windows 7 and Windows XP devices. There must be 5 or 6 different devices just for this lab. And then over here, you can see the lab itself, which steps you through page by page. I know my big head is there, so it's difficult to exactly see what's going on there. You've got side by side. Here's the lab itself. I can pop that out as a separate window, put it on my other screen if I want to. I can download it and print it out if I'd like to. I've got all the details here that I can go through, and it steps you through every screen so you can see what's going on. In the meantime, you've got all of the machines you would ever need to use for this particular labs already set up and configured. So you don't need a Windows operating system installation disk. You don't need the licenses that you might be required to do this. You don't have to set up a Linux device. You don't have to set up a VPN. All the software and all the hardware is already predefined and configured and ready to go. What this is going to step you through is understanding more about how do I put all of these different pieces together and then solidifying in your mind how they operate. Now, one other thing to keep in mind with this, I think something that's kind of an advantage, is the folks at GTS Learning have a special price on this that you only get from this link at professormesser.com/seclabs. They also not only have reduced this price down to $99, but they have also created a 1 hour that you can use this for free. So you follow this link, scroll down to the bottom, and you can have this available and try it out for yourself. See if this really works for you. You'll be able to connect to all of these machines. Here's the domain controller. I'm just using this in my browser. I didn't even load any additional software. It's using HTML5 in the browser to do this. Here's a Windows 7 device. The Linux device is something you use directly. You reference that and send information through it. You probably access it through a browser to do some of these tasks, but you can see how fast this runs to be able to use these and to start up things like Wireshark, be able to capture packets immediately on the network. Let's capture from that network connection and be able to watch the traffic go by. There, we're seeing traffic on this network. And now we can ping, we can send information, we can do trace routes, we can perform these security tasks for this particular exercise, and see all of the decodes for them on the screen in real time. You can find out more about this over at professormesser.com/seclabs and try this out for yourself. See if this is something that might work for you. And I want to thank the folks at GTS Learning for also supporting everything that we're doing with their Security Plus labs. It's a great way to learn too, and something you can have with you wherever you go. Thanks again to the folks at GTS Learning. Let's now go to the next question. Boy, I have plenty of questions. We're already running out of time, so let's get through these. These questions are, this particular one, people, as I mentioned earlier, said, give me more encryption. This is a question that came up in the chat room this week, so I thought this would be a good one to use because now we have to think about how we are encrypting information. So the question specifically is, with asymmetric cryptography, which key is used to encrypt? Is it the session key, the public key, the ephemeral key, the hybrid key, or the private key? One of these is going to be used to encrypt information when you're using asymmetric cryptography. If you happen to know the answer, remember, no commenting in the chat room. Instead, go to Socrative.com to the room name Professor Messer, and you can try this one out. This one was one that came into the chat room because someone was reading from a book, and the book made a few statements that actually made this a little vague. And they were saying, my book is saying, this is how you do it. I said, are you sure it's telling you that? Because that's completely wrong. And they said, well, here's what it says. And it didn't say that you're doing it wrong. It says it was very vague. I thought this is something that should not be vague. This is something that works exactly the same every time you use it. With asymmetric cryptography, this key that's used to encrypt is always going to be the key you use to encrypt. You never use another key other than the one you're going to answer on this to encrypt this information. And the book was implying that you use different keys at different times to encrypt information, which is absolutely not the case for encrypting data and keeping it private. There are other times when you do use keys in different ways with asymmetric encryption, but I'm specifically asking you about how you would encrypt. Let's see how we did with this one. Well, we're kind of split, aren't we? 47%, not quite a majority, said the private key. 39% said the public key. 7% said an ephemeral key. 6% said the session key. Only 1% said the hybrid key. Probably because I made that one up. There is no hybrid key really in any type of well-known encryption. I just had to fill in the blank there that I had available, and I ran out of names. That sounded like a good one. So I want to thank the person that clicked that one, because that, I don't know, I just made it up. Sounds good though, doesn't it? It sounds exactly like something you would use to be able to encrypt with. I don't know why there's even a question with this. Asymmetric encryption, again, is something that uses two keys, and both of the keys are different. One key is your private key, and one key is your public key. The private key, as the name implies, is one that you keep private. This is one that you're the only one who ever gets their hand on the private key. This is incredibly important in asymmetric cryptography, is that this private key really, as the name implies, be very, very private. If somebody was to get hold of your private key, they would gain access to the information you do not want them to gain access to. So this is one where whenever you start looking through these, this is one where the public key, as the name also implies, is one that is absolutely public. Everybody should have access to the public key. Everybody should be able to have your public key. You should give away your public key. There are servers on the internet. This is a screenshot from my keyring, but it's one, actually, did I make this from a server? This is from my keychain, but I've taken this public key from my keychain and I put it onto the public PGP key servers. Also the public GPG key servers. So if you went to those key servers and you said, give me Professor Messer, james@professormesser.com, give me his public key, it would say, here's the public key. You can absolutely use that. And that's because the public key is what you would use to encrypt information. The private key is what you would use to then decrypt that information. Well, that makes sense. If somebody's trying to hide something and they're trying to give it to you without somebody else gaining access, they're going to need to encrypt it in a way that the only way to see it is if you have the private key. It's remarkable the way this works. It's magic in the way that this operates. You can't determine what the private key is based on the public key. There is a relationship there, but you're not able to come up with the private key by what's already made public. That's the beauty of asymmetric encryption, is that you can hand out the world a key that they can use to encrypt information, and the only one who would be able to decrypt it is you, because you have the private key. That's an incredibly important part of this. If you are watching this, by the way, for continuing education units, then you should also get the keyword for this particular month, and it is a literal keyword of private key. So you would go to the Professor Messer website. At the top and the bottom of the Professor Messer website is a link to contact us. It's really contact me. Click that, put into that page that you are sending me a continuing education unit for April of 2016 for the Security Plus study group. And the special keyword is private key, a literal keyword. It's the Francis Scott key, isn't it? This is private key is the secret key of the month. And in fact, it is the private key is the secret key of the month because when asymmetric cryptography, which key is used to encrypt, it would be using the public key to encrypt information and the private key to decrypt it. So whenever we start working through our answers and figuring these out, always remember that you are encrypting with something that's publicly available to encrypt. You're decrypting with something that's private. So make sure you know that. Now, the answer here, B, is B, public. Public key is used to encrypt. Kind of made things complicated for you by telling you the continuing education unit word is private key. But maybe that keeps you on the top of your head here. You can also be very nimble and very know that I'm giving you different things. This is one where when you get into asymmetric encryption, it also becomes very confusing because whenever you start doing things like digitally signing, you digitally sign with the private key. You encrypt with the public key. And if you wanted to create a shared session key that only two people would know, you use both keys. How complicated is that? The answer is very. You just have to use it over and over and get used to using it. If you wanted to send me a private message using PGP or GPG, my public key is out there. You're welcome to send me an email with something that's encrypted, and I'll see if I can decrypt it and send it back to you. So that'd be one way to give it a shot. You're welcome to have me be your guinea pig when working through these things and see if you can work through those. And no, when crypto signing documents, that's not the case. Crypto signing, you still encrypt with the public key. You sign with the private key. There are actually two different steps that you're doing there. Two completely different things. You are still encrypting with the public key. You always encrypt with the public key. You never encrypt with the private key. That wouldn't make sense. I guess you could, but the only person who'd be able to decrypt it is you with the same key. Actually, it would be you with the public key. You wouldn't do that. It'd be a bad idea to encrypt with your private key. Exceptionally bad idea. Never, never, never do that. And it's an important consideration when you're working through all of these different things, dealing with security and asymmetric encryption. It becomes a little complicated whenever you're working through those. There is a lot to the Security Plus exam. I mentioned that earlier. One of the best things you can do, one of the first things you should do, and one of the things you absolutely must do before you take the exam is to download a copy of the CompTIA exam objectives. Whenever somebody says, I don't know if I'm ready to take my Security Plus exam, I say, how much of the exam objectives have you checked off? And they say, what exam objectives? And then I know you're not ready. You need to download the exam objectives. They haven't been updated. The content in here has not been changed in years, literally, but they updated the way it looks. So you'll find that if you haven't downloaded in a while, it has a new look. You can see it on the screen here. Make sure that you go through those pieces and check off everything. If you know that topic, draw a line through it, check it off, do something so that you know that particular topic. Go all the way through this. The exam objectives are extensive in their size. In fact, let's download the latest set of exam objectives. I'm going to download SY0401 file type :PDF, which is my shortcut. I typed that into Google, by the way. I'll show you. You type in the name of the exam objective and the file type PDF, and the first link that comes up is the latest link on CompTIA, which means you can kind of get around their registration process. And it brings you to the SY0401. You can see it's 18 pages long, and most of it are these topics that you would have to know for the exam. And you can just check them off. You can highlight them. You can draw lines through them. Maybe even the PDF viewer that you're using allows you to modify the page, so you can do it all in real time here. It's a great way to do it. So go through this entire list. You can see it's extensive. No other provider of certifications gives you this much information about the exam. CompTIA is very unique at providing this, fortunately. So you really do know exactly what's going to be expected of you when you walk into the exam room. How could you not have this list available and be able to use that? Very, very important before going in. And make sure, obviously, the latest version of the exam is the SY0401. Make sure that whenever you're using any materials that it matches the exact version, because they change the versions every 3 years. You don't want to use something that's old because a lot of the content has been removed and a lot of new content has been added. So you won't be getting the whole story. Make sure you go to the exam objectives and you'll know exactly what is expected of you on that. It's an incredibly important part of this. And if I had to give you one tip that is going to change the way you work on this exam, that's the tip. Always, always, always have a copy of the exam objectives and use it. Go to CompTIA exam objectives is what you should be looking for. You can either Google CompTIA exam objectives or go to professormesser.com/objectives, and you'll be able to download those. I redirect you over to the exact page. We have a Security Plus study group we do every month. Every month I do an A+ study group, a Network Plus study group, a Security Plus study group. It has exactly this format where I ask you questions. You can answer live. It's great if you're here live. The next live event we'll have for Security Plus will be on May the 18th. As always, you can find out all of the study groups that I do and all of the events that I do by going to professormesser.com/calendar or just going to the Professor Messer website. There's a calendar link right at the top. If you're sticking around for the live call-in, you're certainly welcome to do that. We just open up the phone lines. It's open topics. It doesn't have to be security. It can be anything. But if you do have to leave us, know that there's plenty of places you can go throughout the month to get Security Plus information. Of course, my course notes available at professormesser.com/securitycn. All of my Security Plus videos, my entire Security Plus course is available to watch for absolutely free. Every single minute of every single video. You can find all of those at professormesser.com. You can also find them directly on YouTube, on Twitter, on Google+, on Facebook, on Instagram, and all of those by typing in professormesser.com/Facebook/Twitter/Instagram/ all of those things. Of course, don't forget, you can get a 10% discount on your vouchers by going to professormesser.com/vouchers. And again, my thanks to GTS Learning and the 1 hour of live labs that you can try for free is at professormesser.com/seclabs. Well, that brings us to the end of another month of a study group. If you're here for the after show, stick around. We'll take your phone calls. Otherwise, we'll see you next month on the study group. Thanks, everyone. There's a lot of topics that I got through that time. There's a little more explanation at the end of those. Sorry. Probably could have gotten through a few more questions, but the backstory of these questions is so important in understanding it. Yeah, I know. The cryptography section is so small in the percentage that they're expecting, 12%. It is the lowest of all of these different sections, but it is a topic that so few people know about that you really need to study hard to get the entire 12%, probably more than some of the others. But you bring up a good point, is that if you're really struggling with cryptography, you could probably spend your time studying the other 5 domains and still do a little bit better on your exam. You don't want to miss something on the other 5 domains because you were mired in the minutia of cryptography. Not something you really want to work through either with those pieces. That can be a challenge in being able to work with that. Let's get the phone lines up and running. What am I talking about? Why am I droning on? The phone lines aren't up yet, but they certainly will be in just a moment. Let's start the show. Start the show. All right, now I get to call in. You can see this is a very manual process for me. There's nobody here but me. So I call in to this. It makes some beeping noises. And it says,
"Thank you for
you're welcome." And I do,
screener line. Please enter your show number.
I will. Do I put in this?
Enter your 6-digit.
I do. Now I put in this thing here. And we'll see if this works.
Welcome.
Welcome. Hey, it worked. How about that? So if you'd like to call in, or I'm also looking at the chat room. If you're on professormesser.com/live, or you're on the Professor Messer website, there's a live event chat. I will take questions from the live event chat. Or you can call in to 855-785 7545. If you're on Skype, you do the +1 855 785 RJ45, and you can call in as well there and ask questions live. And since people are calling in, I don't know why. Let's find out. On the first call at the 228 area code, are you there, caller? What's your name?
Oh, hey, yes, this is Noel again.
Hey, welcome.
Just saying hi. I have another question.
Hit me.
There's three main injections: SQL, XML, and LDAP that covers over in your slides. And I'm trying to figure out if I see a question or if I see anything, how to differentiate what injection is what.
Like, for instance, what are the differences between something like a SQL injection versus what are the other types you mentioned?
The LDAP and XML, because I know LDAP and SQL are databases.
Certainly a good way to look at that. Sure. You can think of LDAP as being a non-relational, kind of a flat database in many ways, and SQL as being one that is obviously relational and being used almost everywhere. XML is more of a data type of sending information back and forth, not really a database as much as it is a standard way for programs to talk to each other. And that's why with XML, you don't have a specific XML attack, because XML is just a format. It's just a way of communicating. It's just like saying, I'm talking to you in English. Oh, you're using the English attack. Wait, that doesn't make any sense at all. But I can, of course, say things to you that can coerce you into giving me private information. So that would be how you would misuse XML, is getting XML to send information back to you in a certain way, in a certain format you weren't expecting. SQL injection, probably one of the most popular attack types. There was a study done, it's off the top of my head, and I can't remember the details. It was a few years ago that went out to the internet, and there's just tons of databases on the internet that are available for people to connect to. And what people found is that a large percentage of them were susceptible to SQL injection attacks, where you could tell the SQL server a certain text, and I have a video showing how to do this, and having this information come right out of the database without any type of authentication, which is scary, at people's private information. But that's how the bad guys get a hold of authentication information, credit card details, and other private information. LDAP primarily used on security as a way to do centralized authentication. So we don't really see LDAP being used as an attack type or something that is susceptible to attack, as much as we see it being used as a central authentication database. So if you have ever logged into a router or a switch or firewall that you're working on, you're probably authenticating to a central database in your environment that is using LDAP to be able to do that centralized authentication. So all three of those are kind of data storage or data methods in use, but they're all used for very, very different things. And from an attack perspective on the Security Plus exam, it's really SQL injection. Whenever they talk about a database injection, they really are talking about a SQL server.
Oh, okay.
There are, and the concept behind these, by the way, somebody even asked about this in the website earlier in the chat. People even asked about RAID and RAID arrays, because those are also part of the exam. And I recognize these are, if you've never worked with an LDAP database, or you've never worked with a SQL server, or you've never worked with XML and being able to transfer information with XML, they're these nebulous globular terms, and they're almost used interchangeably in some cases. It might even help to find a SQL database tutorial online, or a breakdown of an XML conversation online and how it's used, just so you can get some perspective of how people are using that, and then you might be able to tie it back closer to the terms that are being used on the exam objectives.
Sounds good. Oh.
Well, give that a shot. Let me know how it turns out. And if you have a follow-up, we can either follow up today or next month, or in the chat room, and see what the next steps are.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Noel. Let's go to another call that's been sitting here in the queue from the 252 area code. Let's go to the caller. What's your name, caller?
Hi, my name's Chris.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yeah, I live at the beach, and I was just on the walk on the beach, and I got like a text saying that your thing was going on, so I rushed back, and I got back in time for the last question, and I got it right. So,
Was it worth leaving the beach, though? I have to question that, Chris.
yeah, man, yes, it makes me feel so good. I mean, because there was only 42% that got it right. You know?
Oh, okay, well, right. Oh, that may have been worth it right there.
So look, I don't know how many times you get this question, but you know, I passed the A+, I passed the Net+, and you know, I'm following the same pattern that I did the first 3 tests. You know, I did the Cert Master, I do your videos,
Okay.
I download your PDF, which is a lot bigger than the other PDFs. I mean,
Yes, it is.
It's like twice as long.
It is.
It's scary, you know. And then after I do that Cert Master a couple times, 3 or 4 times through, I'll do the GTS learning, that question bank, you know,
Yeah.
and I'll do that until and then I'll get a couple of random test banks. Man, and then I just came in and answered that question. So, how much harder is this thing? Because I feel like I'm not. I just don't know if I'm. This is a $375 test this time. You know?
Yeah, it's more expensive.
How much harder is this? I mean, I'm doing, I guess, okay, but you know, I just don't. You know, I'm not ready to take that jump. I don't think.
I put the A+, the Network Plus, and the Security Plus difficulty levels on exactly the same difficulty level. So if this was an Olympic diver and they were doing, you know, the triple somersault versus whatever the other dives are, I'm now outside of my scope, clearly. Those different tests, I feel, are exactly the same or very similar in their difficulty. But I find that the content on the Security Plus exam is so broad. It's covering so many different topics. And in the security world, especially, we have our own terms that we use, our own nomenclature that we have. We have this defense in depth, and we have the stateful inspection on our firewalls, and we have all of these intrusion prevention. And then you get into the different VPN configurations and how IPsec operates, and is it encapsulating or is it not encapsulating? And are we doing a hash, or are we doing encryption, and what type of cipher are we using, and is it symmetric or is it asymmetric? And it goes on and on and on. And almost everything on the Security Plus exam is something new. It's not like if you've been working with computers for a while and you're very comfortable with the inside of building your own computer, that you can jump over to the Security Plus and it's very familiar, because it isn't. It's its own world. And on top of that, it's a very broad and very big world. You're absolutely right. When I started creating the PDF for the course notes, I started putting it together. And on these Security Plus course notes were the very first ones where I said, I'm going to take everything. I'm not going to leave anything out. Every slide, every bit of text, I might summarize it just a little bit, but it's all in there. And it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I thought, is this too big? And then I went back and looked at the exam objectives. I said, it's not too big. It's not the course notes that are big. It's the exam itself that's big. It's so broad. There's nowhere you can really cut any of that information and still be a complete list of everything that you could possibly see on the exam. So I don't think you're wrong. I think you're absolutely right that it's a little bit daunting when you compare it to the A+ or compare it to the Network Plus. But ultimately, once you start learning the material, I don't think it's more difficult when you finally sit down to take the exam. I think you'll see a very similar exam structure. I think it will be very familiar in the way they ask the questions. And I don't think they're trying to trick or make it any more complicated than it is, but you're still going to have to know all this material. And I've spent years in the security world in that area working with all of these technologies. And even when I look back at the Security Plus exam and all of these different pieces, it's a lot to know. So I think it's just going to take more time and more study to get all of those things stuck into your brain so that you can sit down. But I think once you take the exam, you already sound like you're kind of getting it. You're like, okay, I got that one right. I think once you sit down to the exam, you'll realize, okay, I know this stuff, and now I can take the exam, and it's a familiar CompTIA exam just as the others that I took. Hopefully that gives you at least a little perspective.
Yeah, a little confidence. Thanks, man. Have a great day.
Good luck, Chris. There is a lot. That Security Plus exam is so huge. It does seem like it goes on and on and on. Imagine the guy making the videos. It just goes on. Am I ever going to finish this project? Just tons of videos. In fact, it's the next time I do a Security Plus course, I have the current one chopped up into tiny pieces. I think I'm going to stick more stuff together because a lot of videos end up being 3 minutes long. Well, we could probably make it 10 minutes long, do something like that. But there's so much topics, it ended up being over 200 videos, and that just gets a little bit crazy. Let's go to this 307 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
My name is Donovan.
Hey, Donovan, thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
I was wondering, what is the hardest question that you have ever seen on the Security Plus?
I wish there was a way to qualify that specific thing. Let me rephrase your question and see if this might help, because there are 6 different domains on the Security Plus exam. In fact, I'll bring them up. You won't be able to see this on the phone, but the people watching live can see these different domains. There's network security, compliance and operational security, threats and vulnerabilities, application data host security, access control and identity management, and cryptography. I even highlighted cryptography because we were just talking about it. And I think of all those different domains, the one that tends to trip people up the most is the one, ironically, with the smallest percentage of content on the exam at 12%. It's the cryptography domain. Because I think that unless you're in the middle of doing security, if you're somebody who works with firewalls and intrusion prevention systems, and you're setting up VPNs, and you're configuring host-to-host VPNs, and you're configuring client-side VPNs, you get very accustomed. You're setting up web servers. You get accustomed to understanding what the value of a certificate authority is, and you understand what the private key is and the public key and how they're used together, and how you would set up the private key infrastructure to protect the private keys but make the public keys accessible to everybody. And it's a world that, unless you've worked with it, it is completely foreign, and it's incredibly technical. Not just in the details of the cryptography itself, which you don't necessarily need to know for the exam, but there's so many different types. There's so many different types of hashes. There's so many types of symmetric encryption algorithms. There's so many different types of asymmetric encryption methodologies. And you have to know all of them for the exam, and some details about each one of them, the advantages, the disadvantages, the profile of how they work. It's a lot. So if I had to pick one set of topics that tends to trip people up the most, it's cryptography. But remember, the cryptography section is only 12% of the exam. One thing I try to tell people is don't spin your wheels. If you're stuck in the mud, don't spend a lot of time on cryptography. Make sure you spread it out so that you can answer some of the 20% of the network security questions, or the 20% of the threats and vulnerability questions, which are almost twice the amount of questions that you're going to see on the exam. So don't spend so much time on the little things that you forget to take care of the big things that are going to happen during the exam as well. Does that make sense, Donovan? I think hopefully that's giving you some perspective.
Oh, yeah, it makes sense.
Well, good luck with that. Let us know how it goes too. Thanks for calling.
You're welcome.
There is, it's kind of like on the Network Plus exam, there's a little bit of having to do some type of subnetting, IP subnetting. But it's such a tiny bit. A lot of people spend hours and days going through subnetting, and they might get one question on their exam, which has got to be a challenge. Let's go to 703 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Yeah, this is Robert.
Hey, Robert. Thanks for calling.
Hey, well, first, I'm a big fan just because your stuff is so good, so comprehensive.
And now I'm a big fan of yours for saying that. Thank you.
Oh, well, I'm a complete newbie at this. I've been in a world of robotics, a world of computer programming for 20 years. I'm not a networks guy. So I've got to take the Security Plus. I've got to get certified. It's part of the government subcontract requirements. Yep. So here I am, and I'm a little nervous about all the stuff on it that CompTIA says it's the test is designed for people who've been in this for a couple of years. I haven't. Right. Should I take some more time, or can I guess my question is, should I expect to bomb this thing? If I'm just not, I don't play with networks. I have limited, firewall experience. I can understand the concepts, but actually doing them, the performance-based stuff.
You are not alone at all. You are absolutely among many people right now that are going through exactly the same thing you are. And for those that aren't in or are not doing work with the federal government, you may not realize the Security Plus exam is where the federal government considers to be kind of the entry-level certification that you are required to have when you're doing these types of IT-specific either jobs as a contractor or working for directly the U.S. federal government, which means a lot of people have to take and pass the Security Plus exam, even if they are only at a tertiary level working with the federal government. They are mandated, legally required to get their Security Plus exam, which is that's neither here nor there, but it certainly is challenging because I've had a number of people just in the past week that have said, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to be doing this after I pass the exam, but I have to do it to get this minimum to work with the federal government. Fortunately, I can tell you people that have done this in the past have been able to pass this exam with having not just no security experience. There have been people that have done this that have had no IT experience at all. It obviously means they had to work a little bit longer and a little bit harder to get these topics in their brain. But I would say the Security Plus exam is one that's easier to pass if you know nothing than perhaps the A Plus exam or the Network Plus exam is, because a lot of the Security Plus exam is just understanding the topics and understanding the policies and processes and procedures. So for today, for instance, on the live stream in the first hour, I talked about which one of these is a symmetric encryption algorithm. Well, you don't have to have any knowledge. In fact, you don't even necessarily even need to understand what a symmetric encryption algorithm is if you already know what the lists of those are. So fortunately, if you're good at memorizing or you're good at putting things into bundles and categories and keeping those things straight, I think you'll do okay. And a lot of the concepts on the Security Plus exam are about policy and procedure. I love those questions because they talk about a table exercise, or they talk about creating a security policy and some of the best practices, which really don't have a technical component there at all. I think anybody can understand the concepts around those particular topics. So I wouldn't worry so much about it. It's going to take you a little bit more of training time, of learning time to get some of these topics down, because there are a number of topics on networking that deal with routers and switches, intrusion prevention and firewalls, and understanding what all those differences are. And if you've never worked with any of those before, now you're starting from scratch. Whereas a number of people that are coming over from the Network Plus certification, they already got tested on those already. So they're kind of up to speed on what these different devices do. They can now start applying them more to the Security Plus piece. But I don't think it's insurmountable at all. I think if you grab the exam objectives, you get a good book, you watch videos, or you get other study resources and just go through the exam objectives. And if you can cross off, I know everything there is to know about this particular objective as it applies to the exam, and you go through the entire exam objective list, you'll be ready for the exam. It's absolutely doable if you don't have any IT experience whatsoever. It's just going to take you a little bit longer, Robert.
All right. Thank you. I needed to hear that, so thank you very much.
You could do it. People are sending me emails all the time. I have zero IT experience. I had to do this for the federal government. I passed it. They were just sending me an update and a thank you, and I love getting those notes. But people are doing it, and if they can do it, you absolutely can do it as well.
All right.
Thanks,
Great.
Robert.
Thank you very much. Yep. Have a good day.
Let's go to the 443 area code. If you're there, caller, what's your name?
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Abby.
Hey, thanks for calling.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, my question is this. I already passed the Security Plus exam, but, I noticed that I have this knowledge gap on the tools and, some of the devices.
Sure.
So if I go on your website, I know there is a set lab on it. So I want to know, for how long do I have access to the live, lab after payment?
Specifically the Security Plus lab that I mentioned today, the one from the folks at GTS Learning with the live lab that I demonstrated. In fact, I'll bring the picture of this so those that are watching live could have seen, yeah, we were working on the lab. We were having traffic go through. I was doing some packet captures, which are still going, by the way. I've got lots of packet captures going. This is a product from GTS Learning. It's not my product, so I don't support it. When you purchase it, you're buying it from GTS Learning, who I work with very closely, and they're great people over there, and I like working with them because they're just awesome with the products they have. I believe it is when you purchase the Live Labs, it's $99 if you go through my link, and I believe they give you access for a year, but you'll want to double check that with them if you're planning on doing that. But I think it's 12 months.
Okay. Because I'm going through your website, and I saw the price, the Live Labs included,
Yep.
$99. So if I add that to the cart, I'm going to have access to the GTS Learning.
Well, that link that takes you over to GTS Learning is for the Live Labs and the GTS Learning products. I think when you get the Live Labs, you get their book online, and you get some sample questions as well. But all of that is on the GTS Learning site. It doesn't include any of my videos or offline version of my things because that's all a GTS Learning product.
Okay, I see. So the Live Labs will be able to, will give me I'll be able to work on some of the tools like the Wireshark, the Nmap, and code.
Oh, yes, it is extensive. In fact, I've taken a number of the Live Labs, and the graphics that I have in my course, I've been able to create by running Nmap on their machines or running a Wireshark on their machines because they already have it set up. Why should I load a brand new operating system? I can simply connect to that and run through these applications and try out connecting a VPN and doing the IPsec configuration and really getting into the details, and it's all in the Live Labs.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's the area I'm looking at. And then the other question is this. Going through your study groups, anytime I attend, it gives me 1 credit, right?
Right. Every study group is 1 hour, correct?
Yes, 1 hour. So do you have an idea, what other things that will, probably the seminars or other classes I could take that will boost me up to the 40 credits?
There are a lot of different things that CompTIA looks for on the renewal with the CEUs. I realize a number of people are going to renew by getting a higher level certification, but on the CompTIA website, they have how you can renew, and they have a list of the different CE activities, and they have a click that says learn about. You have to really hunt for this, but there's a click that takes you to learning the continuing education units, and there's a tiny little link on this page that has download the CE program activity summary, and it will bring up a PDF. For some reason, it's a PDF instead of being on the website that takes you through all of the different things you can do to renew your certification. Earn a CompTIA certification, earn a non-CompTIA certification, teach a course, create instructional materials, attend a webinar, attend a conference, complete a training course, complete a college course. So they have all of these things listed, and then you can go through this list and combine together these continuing education units. You should also be aware of things like attending a webinar like this one gives you an hour of CEUs, but in a 3-year period for the Security Plus, you're going to need a lot of CEUs, but you can only get 10 by watching a webinar. So you'll have to make up the other CEUs from other places. You can't just watch my study groups and get everything you need. You'll have to do other things as well.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thanks for watching.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye. There is, I don't know why they hide that information. It seems to be one of the most requested things. Maybe that's why it's one of the most requested, because they hide it so well. I'll take you through exactly where I went that. I went to the page on the website on continuing education. It's right at the top. Renew your certification, learn more. How to renew your CompTIA certification. At the very bottom is a link on, not the very bottom, I guess it's number 4 on their list, is learn more about the types of CE activities, which takes you to another page that you finally click on, download the activity summary. I don't know why I'm downloading this as a PDF. All of this looks like it would be something that would be a lot of sense to be on a website somewhere, but that's their party. So that's how you get there. Not an easy thing to get to that point, is it? Struggling through all those pieces. I got another call, so let's go back to the phone lines and go to the 203 area code. Hi, caller, are you there? What's your name?
Jacob.
Hey, Jacob. Thanks for calling.
You're my hero. I just wanted to say that.
Well, thank you so much.
What is the best internet browser?
The best internet browser? There isn't one. I can pretty much tell you. I don't think I think of internet browsers like I think of internet service providers. Like nobody likes their ISP. Nobody seems to like their browser either. I use day to day. Currently, what I use is Chrome. In the past, I've used Firefox happily. I don't really use Safari very much, although I used to. Ironically, when I was on Windows a lot, I would use Safari a lot. And I like what Microsoft is doing with Edge. But for my day-to-day, I've kind of gotten a nice, comfortable shoe with Chrome. I like Chrome.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, happy 420, and thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for calling. There is, whenever I start getting into a browser and I really like it, that's where it turns on me. They do one update and everything shifts around as soon as I get that update there and everything's working perfectly and I've got all the right extensions and I'm in that zone. They always do an update that messes everything up. The last apple cart that tipped was with Firefox. Firefox was running great. It was beautiful. We had a great relationship. We liked the same things. We would go see the same movies. We'd like them. It was great. And then Firefox got an update and started eating memory like it was the only thing left on Earth. And it would just eat up all my memory and then went away. And I was very patient. I was waiting for the update. I was waiting for the update. It never came. And I had to abandon it's not me, it's you kind of thing in that particular case. And I went over to Chrome. And my relationship with Chrome has not been great either, but it's where I am right now. You go to war with the army you got, and that's what we got. It works pretty well though. I'm pretty happy with working through Chrome currently, and they've actually made some nice improvements to Chrome over the years. Now that I've been using it. I don't find that it takes much memory, though. I'm not finding that same memory utilization. I do see a bit of pre-caching that goes on with Chrome, which helps quite a bit, and it's getting a lot smarter about its pre-caching. Chrome used to be very, very memory hungry as well. The most recent updates have changed its memory footprint dramatically. I was very surprised. I run a lot of memory stats on my screen. I really can't see them. See if I zoom up on this and get rid of my head. Maybe I can show you. No, apparently I cannot because I did something wrong. I did something very wrong on here. And I've touched the wrong thing and it's made very bad things happen. Back on here. Let's change this around V4. Oh, I know what happened. That happened. There we go. So let me show you my screen and show you if I give you a view. So I'm in Mac OS, but it's a similar thing. I used to run the same type of stuff running here. I just always have a CPU, a memory, a network configuration. I can see all the things that are happening on my computer, and then I get a breakdown of how memory utilization has been. Now, I have just a ton of memory on this machine. This is a bad example to use. But if I look at all the different processes, Chrome clearly the number one, but I'm doing a lot with Chrome right now on the screen. So don't get angry with me that, gosh, of course Chrome has a lot, but it's only 5.5 gig, even with all the things that I'm doing right now, which, by the way, at the same time while this is going on, I'm still running behind the scenes, the remote desktop with all the stuff that's going on. And I've still got the memory utilization is working very nicely. So the Chrome has been a good one. I like what it's been doing. Boy, there's a lot going on my computer. And that's kind of the way it goes on my computer anyway. Let's go back to the phone lines now that we've really broken down this mess of things that I have. It's really remarkable how much I've got going. Let's go to the 203 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? All right. Oh, wait. I haven't turned it up. Let's try that again, caller. Hi, what's your name?
Hello, I'm Christian.
Hey, Christian. Thanks for calling.
What's your favorite breed of dog?
This comes up very often, interestingly enough, in the on the videos. I always go through what my favorite breed of dog is. And if I had to choose one, I'd really have. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't really terminate. There is, whenever I start going through, in fact, I was working through the Chrome the other day because I use a cookie editor whenever I'm working in the browser. And it seems everything I'm doing always goes back to the extensions that I have in Chrome. Somebody was asking me the other day about all the extensions that I have. And when I start working down, I'm running on mine, for example, LastPass. If you're not using LastPass or some type of password management program, you're doing yourself a disservice. LastPass I find to be one of the best ones I'm using. Other extensions on my computer, I disable a lot of them just because there's a ton of stuff that is on my computer I don't use. I have a lot of stuff set up for Google Analytics because I'm watching when people are going to my website and what they're doing. People often ask, nobody's using Windows XP, so why should I learn it? And then I go to my analytics and show them all the people running Windows XP that are hitting my website in the last 30 days, and it's remarkable. I have extensions set up for Google Docs because I like to use Google Docs to share files and other things within Messer Studios. LastPass is there. I have some Reddit enhancement suite because I use Reddit a lot. I'm on the Reddit always commenting to people that are there as well. And what else is on here? That's really about it. So it's not a huge grouping of extensions, and I like to keep it that way primarily because of security. You never know exactly what's going to happen on the security side with this. I did get one of these calls from the IRS people. I need to find this and play it for you on the next study group, where they call you and tell you that they are taking you to court and you need to pay this money right now. And you need to call me back. They leave a voicemail. You need to call me back because you're going to jail. I really don't say you're going to jail. I think they say we're going to start legal proceedings unless you call me back. And what they don't know, of course, is that I know exactly how much money I've given the government and how much I've given the IRS, and I stay right on top of it because when you have a company and personal stuff, you're always keeping track of all these different things. So I immediately knew that was a scam. And if you get into that, just know that the IRS is not going to call you and do any of those things. They send you letters and they do it all that way, which actually is much better. Instead of you get to call them and have that conversation with them, which is fantastic. And being able to work through those. It is your last warning. That is what they say. You're absolutely right. See tuned in the chat room is that they leave the voicemail. This is your final warning. Like, well, you didn't give me any other warnings. So that seems a little odd. That should be your first flag. Somebody in the chat room asking about from the perspective of studying and failing these exams. I'm right there with you. I took a wiring exam, a network cabling exam. I had to take 3 times to finally pass it. I failed the first time, failed the second time, finally passed the third time. And it's a challenge when you're trying to figure this out. The CompTIA exams, I think, are really good because you have a way to go to the exam objectives and list out everything you need to know. The other thing I can tell you is to get as many study resources as you can. When I was first studying for the A+ exam, I read through one book. I thought it was okay. And then I picked up another book. I like to read 2 different books for a certification exam. I picked up the other book and found that it really connected much better with my way of learning. So I found the second book to be much better. So if you have one book and everybody tells you this book's great, you should have this book, it may not really be for you though. You may be maybe a different book that's for you. One thing I can recommend is that on Amazon, a lot of these books you can download and read, or even read online a portion of the book. So read through the first chapter, read through the second chapter, or the different information they have there, and see if the voice of that book fits with your style of learning, because you may find a dramatic difference between those. And then use your exam objectives as your checklist. And most books will have a way to cross-reference the chapter in the book with the topics on the exam objectives. So you can always refer back to the exam objectives. And of course, I number my videos to match the exam objectives. So it should be very easy for you to cross-reference from one book back to the videos, cross-reference from the book back to the exam objectives. It should be very, very clear. One of the books I have has an entire appendix that takes the entire book, all the topics, and shows you what topic it is in the exam objectives and where it is in the book, which I thought was nice to have. That does come in handy, being able to walk through it and use it. I like having at least some way to cross-reference back to the exam objectives, and most good books will do that, I think. Yeah, I have UMA as well. The spam filter not working so well for me. Actually, I may not even have it enabled on mine. I use UMA. That is my voice over IP system I use for my home telephone, and that's where the IRS stuff came in. I know if somebody's calling my home number, because I don't use my home phone. Everybody in my house has a mobile device. They use the mobile phone, or they use Skype, or they use Google Voice, or they use something else other than a home phone. I don't even think I have UMA plugged in at the moment. I don't even think it's connected to my network. It couldn't ring if I wanted it to. That's how few calls I get on my home phone. So if somebody's calling my home phone and leaving a message, it's somebody I don't usually talk to. And that's one good way I can tell that something's up if somebody's going through that process. You should have that set up on for a security perspective, that way to do it. Sometimes it's good to get these calls, though. It's interesting to see the scams coming in from my perspective, so that I can tell people what to look out for. I can tell my family not to pay any attention. If somebody calls them begging for money and can't tell them what the money is for, you can explain to them that they're being scammed. That one is just remarkable in its beauty. So avoid those types of situations at all costs. Let's go through some of the questions you sent me during the week. Whenever you register for the study group, I ask you for a question. Some of them are very funny, but I'm really looking for questions that you might want me to answer. So let's go through a few of these. One of these questions really speaks to what we were talking about earlier, where everything in the cryptography section is information that you've never really worked with before. So it's all very globulous. It's very hard to really understand the details behind it. And some people find the similar thing with the OSI model, and I get that. The OSI model itself is not straightforward to understand if you're just getting into networking or you're just getting into Security Plus, but there is a component of the OSI model on the exam. So I highly recommend you either work through the videos with dealing with OSI, but go back to download Wireshark. If you want to understand OSI and you want to understand it easily, my tip for you is to download and use Wireshark. See if I've got my Security Plus live labs have closed on me finally. They finally realized I wasn't doing anything and have shut down. So I can't demonstrate, but I do demonstrate in my video of how each section of the protocol decode for a single packet all relates back to the OSI model. So if you ever wanted to differentiate between all of these different pieces, it's all laid out for you very nicely in Wireshark. I found Wireshark at the time. I was with a company called Network General, which created a product called the Sniffer. It's the Sniffer Network Analyzer. And that's where that name comes from, is that product. And at the time, that's when I really started getting into the intricacies of OSI and understanding how to break out the OSI model. And a protocol analyzer does it so well at being able to do that. So you should absolutely be familiar with those pieces. And I think the Wireshark helps you really understand that. So in the chat room, there's a question about, will the exam have interactive questions on it? It has performance-based questions. And performance-based questions is what CompTIA refers to as anything but a fill in the blank. I'll show you what I mean. I will pull up on the CompTIA website, on the CompTIA YouTube channel, is a video describing taking the CompTIA exam. So in this video, which has great music.
Types of exam questions.
See, isn't that nice? They have an example of what the exam looks like. So you can walk into an exam. You've never taken a CompTIA exam before. This is exactly what you'll see on the screen. So this might help a little with you trying to figure out what's going to be expected of you. Kind of gives you a breakdown of what these screens look like. I'm going to jump ahead, shows you all the different things you can have on the screen, flagging questions. Here's the multiple choice. So we're familiar, of course, with multiple choice questions. These are the normal questions you would have on the exam. But here's what CompTIA says. Anything that's not a multiple choice, you might have fill in the blank questions. You might have matching questions like this one. There's a drag and drop. Here's one where you click a button, it brings up a picture, and you have to answer based on what you see in the picture. On the CompTIA Security Plus exam, I don't think you'll get one that deals a lot at the command line because there are no command line commands on the CompTIA Security Plus exam objectives. But you might get one that has something more of a graphical front end, or you may have to move things around the screen or put them in a certain order. Those are performance-based questions. So make sure that you understand the details of what's going to be expected of you on the exam based on some of these things. That is a video called Taking a CompTIA Exam, and it's on the CompTIA YouTube channel. So you won't necessarily be asked to go to the command line and type in Cisco commands to configure a firewall. But it may bring up a screen of a firewall that says, what should we do to allow or prevent a certain protocol? Or it may ask you to connect this firewall with the different things on the screen, connected to a switch or connected to a router, connected to the other pieces. Something that applies more towards the exam objectives than you doing a command line breakdown. There are no command line or configuring Cisco configuration commands on the Security Plus exam. They're not part of the exam objectives. So I would not expect to be asked anything like that for the exam, fortunately, on those pieces of the exam. I think that's one where if you follow the exam objectives, you'll be fine. If you know everything in the exam objectives, you're going to pass. That is your personal guarantee to yourself, is that if you can go through the entire exam objective and check off everything, you're going to pass this exam. You know everything now already. Even if they ask it in a weird way, even if they ask a fill in the blank, even if they ask you to put things in an order, you already know the content. They're just asking it in a different way than they would from a multiple choice question. So that's what I think. If you had to really concentrate on what you needed to know for the exam, that's your first place to go. It's your last place to go is the CompTIA exam objectives, and you'll be fine. And that's one wherever I start breaking out the details of what's on the exam, or people ask what's the hardest thing I'll be asked, or what should I expect to know, or am I ready to take the exam? I have the same answer every time. Go to the exam objectives, check off everything you know. If you've checked off 95% of what's in there, you're absolutely ready. Go in and take that exam. You're going to pass. I don't think anybody can check off 100%. But if you're pretty close, if you're somewhere up there, you'll do okay. I think that's what you should focus on. And what a great place to go is those exam objectives. It's really remarkable because I've created other training courses with other manufacturers' materials, with other manufacturers' exam objectives, they call them, and they're half a page of information for a Microsoft exam. They don't really give you any information at all, but CompTIA really does. So if you're accustomed to taking a Microsoft exam or a VMware exam or Cisco exam, you're going to come to CompTIA and not even realize they've really laid it out for you. They tell you everything you need to know. You may not realize it unless you download and look at it. So don't miss that opportunity. They're telling you everything. How can you not use that? Of course you should use that. It makes perfect sense. Let's go back to the questions that you've sent me. I have some others that at least one or two we can get through before my voice goes out of this. You know, one of the things that came up in the chat room this week was somebody had said and I'll mention this again, I mentioned it a little bit during the first hour, is that they had a book that said to encrypt in asymmetric encryption, you encrypt using the private key. But you could use either one. It's kind of the way it was written. That's not what they meant when they wrote it, but when you read it, that's what it sounded like. You use one or the other. Just use one of these, and the other one is what you would use. Now, it obviously doesn't make sense. Technically, that's true. You know, technically, you could encrypt with the private key and the public key would decrypt it. But obviously you wouldn't do that. It's called the public key and the private key, not because the keys are different in some way, that it can only be a private key and it can only be a public key. We're kind of assigning it that name because it's a private key that we keep private. You could easily switch them around and call them the different names. Well, I don't want this to be my private key. I want this one to be my private key. You get to decide when you figure it out. Which one of these is private? This one. I'll make this one my private key, and we'll make this one the public key, and we'll put it out there. The difference is people's access to the key. And I think that's what the book was trying to say, but it wasn't saying it very well. The private key is obviously one you keep private. That's why we call it the private key. It's not called the private key because when we built it, we had to put the word private in it. That's the one we just chose to be private, so it's always private. And the public one's the one that's always public. They always make public. So these are terms we assign to it. It's not a technical term. It's not something within the key that inherently makes it a private key. It's just half of a key. It's just half of a key pair. And we just happen to call it the private key. And that's why people might get mixed up by that. But we're calling it the private key because that's the key we use to encrypt with. And it's the key that we would sign with. We decrypt it with the private key. It's the key we sign with. Digital signature is incredibly important. Did it really come from me? Only way I can be sure is if I sign it with my private key, nobody else has this key, so it must have come from me. Nobody else has that stamp, so it must have come from me. That's the same idea as anything else. It's my digital wax stamp that I'm putting on there. And if somebody else was to look at it, they go, oh, it must have come from him because it's got his signature right there. And it's a digital signature because nothing can change. When you send me the continuing education unit email saying, here's the one for this study group, I send you back an email where I digitally certify that you must have been here. All I'm doing is sending you back an email, but I digitally sign it so that if you receive it, you can't change it and have that signature still work. Because if you modify, oh, I only got 1 hour, I got 10 hours. And you put a 0 after it, I now have 10 hours of study group. Well, if you try to verify with the digital signature, the verification will fail because you modified the text that I digitally signed to begin with. That non-repudiation and the verification of the content that's in there are two very important aspects of that digital signature. So you want to be careful not to change anything, because if somebody checks up on you with that digital signature that I added and it fails, they're going to wonder why it failed. You need to give the original and try it again. In fact, you should check if you're running PGP or GPG. As soon as I send you the email, you can check that email to say, did it really come from him? Did anybody modify this email between the time that I sent it and the time you received it? You'll be able to check. You'd only be able to do that if the private key was private to me and the public key was public to you. So that's the idea behind those. Well, that brings us to the end of another study group, I think. This is one where I could not do this without you. Thanks so much for your support. Thanks for going through and answering those questions this month. I love putting them together. I love doing these live events, and I really couldn't do it without your help, your support, and your questions and everything that you do throughout the month. So thank you for that. Again, we have another study group next month. We'll have our A+, our Network Plus, and our Security Plus study groups here. So make sure you tune in for those. You can find out all about those at professormesser.com/calendar. And of course, you can always check on the website. I'm always in the chat room around there somewhere and finding out what's going on. Thank you so much for attending. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next month on the study group. Thanks, everyone.